have my drum here, so I'm using this one. Okay. I feel like I've done a lot of snare drum stuff, but snare drum's my favorite. So I figured I'd do one more, or another one of these for snare. So if anybody has, well, if anybody has any questions about snare drum, or I don't know if I have any timpani mallets here either, but there's a timpani over there too. So let's see. I don't know if people saw my Instagram TV video of my French rudimental etude improving thing, like that kind of stuff. So that's kind of cool to do. So yeah, I feel like something I haven't really talked about are rolls a lot. I have like a couple small videos about rolls, but like the different types of rolls you can get and what constitute a good roll, that kind of stuff. So what I'm gonna kind of rant about, I guess, is how I actually do rolls. So the basis of my rolls, especially the loud ones, are triple stroke. So I usually do that kind of thing. And the way I usually start people off is just having them do, if you have the book, you do this too. So just letting the sticks bounce by themselves. Cool. Somebody just asked, oh, can you talk about hands feeling the same? Oh yeah, definitely I could talk about that. Oh yeah. With concerning that, how to make the hands more even as far as feeling and sounding the same, my personal belief is that because unless you're super ambidextrous, both hands will never ever feel the same. Because this one is for me, this is my right hand. I know this is backwards, but so my right hand is more dominant and has more energy and things like that. My left hand is a lot more weaker, but it's really good at certain aspects of my drumming. So I usually put all of my grace notes in my left hand. If I'm leading into something, it's really good at ramping up. So it's really good at crescendoing a lot on a very fast passage. The more important thing is that they sound the same. So the things that constitute that are making sure they have the same amount of weight applied to each hand. So making sure you're accessing the same parts of the body. So weight, and then the throw pattern, making sure the throw is exactly the same. Like if you're throwing from the middle finger in your right, and you're throwing from the first finger in your left hand is going to sound brighter than your right. Because of if you got the book, you understand why. But yeah, so you want to make sure they're throwing from the same place, with the same amount of weight, and with the same speed. And it becomes even more important when you put rolls in, because it has to be the same, or else you're going to get like, or that kind of thing. Also, the densities have to be the same, so that means the pressures have to be the same too, or else you're going to get like that kind of stuff. So it has to sound the same more than feel the same. Because for me, I don't think they're ever going to feel the same, because they're two halves of, That's just me, though. Cool. So usually with students, I make sure that they're throwing from the same spots, the throw patterns are the same, the weight's the same, and that they're relaxed as possible on both sides. And that usually gets a more unified sound between the hands. So. What I tend to do, even when they are still like the colors are the same, I still can utilize the fact that they're different. So normally my right hand is a little I would say, a little darker just because of how much weight I put into it than my left. So my left hand's naturally going to be a little brighter. So what I tend to do is put the denser stick in my left hand to compensate for the natural brightness, because a denser stick is going to be a lot darker, in my opinion. Like a thinner stick is going to won't access the drum as much. So I usually put the heavier stick or the denser stick in my left hand to compensate for its natural brightness. So the other thing is, when you choose stickings, you can utilize the fact that they're different to your advantage. So if you have like a march or something, you have the downbeats on your right. It'll sound different than, like, it won't sound as, my left hand's not as good at it for some reason, but like this, the colors are the same, but the intention and intensity is different, you know? So if I want to add intensity, then I have to really think about it with my left hand. But, you know, if there's a piece where I would like it to sound that way, then I would use my left hand for that. So, but for me, it's a lot more natural to do right, cool. So you have your different options. Cool. So I digress from that. Okay, so how I do the roll. Okay, so I start off with just letting the stick bounce by itself. And then as soon as I feel like the buzzers are going to stop, I lift and then throw the next stick. And then what I do, I lift it sooner and sooner until I get the amount of bounces that I want. So let's say I want 8. That was 7. Cool. And then I just keep shortening it until I get to my 3. So. Then what increases the speed of the bounces is 2 things. The speed of the throw can increase it, so if you throw it faster. But that also increases the intensity of the attack. So if you don't want that to happen, the other thing you can do is bring the stick closer to the palm. So the looser the stick is, the more free it is to do that kind of thing, right? Then if you want it to be faster, I usually let the stick come closer to my palm, and then I throw from there. So let's say this is what the first one was. It was that far. Cool. If I bring it here and I keep my fingers from being too loose, but still loose, you know what I mean? Just a little stiffer, then it'd be cool. So then if I want it faster, then I bring it closer. Cool. And then closer still. Cool. So that's mainly what's happening is, so I use a 3-point fulcrum. So my middle finger is the springboard for the bounces. If you think of like a rubber band or something, a looser rubber band is not going to have a lot of, like, if you're just having a rubber band without adding any pressure pulling it, then it's just going to have like this loose feel. As you increase the pressure or tension of the rubber band, then the spring becomes a lot more fast. So I usually do it from my middle finger. Other things, if your first finger and thumb, it can either come, depending on how you use it, you can either come from the tip of the first finger for that spring, or from the pressure of the sides. I think people usually have more success here because that way you're not holding and pressing at the same time with those. So Cool. So that's your springboard. Just think of like, what do you call it, a trampoline. A tighter trampoline is going to like bounce faster. Again, you still want to leave enough, only use as much pressure as you need to get the speed that you want. And I would suggest not pushing, but really relegating the stiffness to the base of your finger. Because if you start pushing in, this is what happens when you push from the top. You get that. You get this like really weird, a very angular bounce that goes like that. Instead of having it bounce like here, it kind of digs in. To get the bounce to do that, you have to relieve this tip pressure and let the base of the finger be what's causing it to stay rigid, okay? Because that'll leave it, if you start at the base and use the base, that still gives this enough give to pull, cool? If you do at the tip, you get that. If you do at the base, you get that. So if you bought the book, you know how to manipulate them. So, cool? Cool? Hey, you want to say hi to the people? Who? The people. I'm live. You want to say hi? Say hi.
I'm not on the
Easy.
camera. I just need sticks.
Oh, you need sticks?
Yeah, where's sticks?
I met the UFC. Did you do it?
I did. It was actually good.
Congratulations. They just had conducting juries.
Sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine. You want to say hi to the people?
Who were we saying hi to?
I have no idea. There are 7 people on. Hi. We're talking about roles.
Do you have sticks?
Do I have sticks? I bet Josh has
Do we
sticks.
need sticks? What do we need? Sticks
I don't
for?
know. They were in my bag. Now they're not in my bag anymore.
Sorry.
We're looking for sticks. Anybody have any questions about that? BT Dubs? Hi. Hi. Oh, Krieger. Krieger?
Did you not bring your bag?
German grip.
Did you not bring your bag?
No, my bag's there.
When
It's
you're-
disappear from it.
Oh, rules are, let's see.
Probably some fine.
Looking for, yes. Okay, let's see. In German grip, which is generally what I do, when you are trying to play pianissimo single strokes faster, are there any rules or things you're looking for in your hands? Do you close the gap between the thumb and index finger or just use fingers? I think generally, let's see. Generally, okay, so the super specific thing, I usually, if I'm playing really fast and soft, I move all the weight to the very front of my hand. Actually, it depends too. If I'm trying to be super articulate about it, I put all the weight into the front and bounce from the front, like the very tip of the fulcrum. It'll increase the speed of the bounce so you're not, doesn't feel sluggish, so that'll give you the speed. And it'll help with control. If you use the weight from the back, you kind of feel a little more detached from the drum. So I'll give you an example. Like if you're doing, if you're from the back, you're like, versus the front, you feel a little closer to the drum. That being said, I don't use fingers because I never learned how in school. And especially when I'm playing super soft, I try to add energy from my forearms and shoulder to give it a little bit more depth, and also to not feel like I'm just kind of going like playing super like close or dainty, I guess. So I try to use. So I try to feel like I'm doing that, but I'm not. It's just my wrist, but with the weight of the arm, it feels like the energy is doing like a very army stroke, but it's really just the wrist with weight from the arm. That being said, if you trying to play. Oh, the other thing that helps is phrasing through things. If you're trying to do like if you're trying to play it too even, it makes it really hard to control. So if you're trying to go like have somewhere to go. That kind of thing. Bounce from the tip of the fulcrum. Yeah. Yeah, it's so you can have, so depending on how, if your thumb first finger, like super just that, then the bounce can, literally if you sense the stick either from the base of the, like the bottom of the tip of the thumb, and you can sense it like throughout that spectrum, and depending on where you sense it, the weight will either, the weight of the stick will either decrease at the top because you have less stick and increase as you get lower. So that increases the weight and the sound and depth of the stick that you'll get into the drum. Yeah, same thing goes for when you have the rest of your fingers. If you're thinking about throwing from like the top of the hand to the bottom, that increases the weight of the stick as well, because if you're at the top, you have less stick to access versus the bottom when you have all of that to access. And then if you go further, then you get, it's in the book. And then what was the other thing? How fast can you play pianissimo strokes? Where do you think is the limit? It kind of depends. It's all about, what I call it is the twitch, like this natural twitch that happens when you, like if you lift your wrist slowly and you have this point where it like starts twitching a little bit. It happens the same where, I wish I could do this. Let's see. You can't see it. Well, if you like raise your knee a little bit from the ground, and like from your foot. So if you're pressing on your toe and lifting your foot like that, you get this like weird twitch at a certain point from the ankle. It's like accessing that in your wrist. And the more control you have of that, the faster you can play. The thing is, when you're playing so soft, you have to make sure the twitch isn't too much, because it can get like that. It has to be just enough. And it just depends on your personal body. For me, I can do comfortably like probably like that. That's comfortable. So your limit is your limit. Past that, I would do doubles and stuff. Cool. Yeah, so where was I? I was talking about springboard. Yeah, so me personally, I do threes, and threes tend to be, I guess the one thing about rolls is you don't want to put too much information on the head, or else you get like a very not good sounding roll. Hopefully this won't blow the speaker out. But if you like put too much information into the head, like you get like, so that's like too dense of a, or too pressed, right? And then if you put too little, you get like, you get that, right? So you just want something that's so what you're going to do is manipulate the pressure or the springboard and find a spring that's good for a certain speed. So if you're like, or, and literally what I would do is practice like super slow and really maintaining that spring from whichever finger you're using. Or if you're doing 4, super deliberate about it. The more deliberate about it you are in the beginning, when you let it go, then it becomes a lot easier. If you just that kind of thing. And somebody just asked, let's see. Oh, no problem, and thank you. Yeah, so. And with rolls, the other thing is with rolls, you have to worry about endurance. And one thing, especially when you're playing loud, the more you can, like, access the base of your fingers and not the tips, the more endurance you'll have. Because if you're squeezing from the tip of the finger, you're also squeezing like a muscle in the forearm that's going to get tired after a while. If you access the base of the fingers, you won't access that muscle as much. So that gives this a little bit more longevity for the roll. Again, and then we've just been doing wrists only. First, with all these bounces and stuff, you're going to do wrists only. And then once you're comfortable with the wrists, then your forearms this way, because that's the way your forearms move. It's not this thing. And I'll try to explain why this happens when you're doing this really fast, but but it's not this, okay? That's like a whatever this is, okay? It's your forearms go like that. So yeah, so you're gonna keep the same pressure in the base that you had, and just relegate this motion to this motion. Cool. And then let me just do this first. Okay. So yeah. So you did this first. Keep the same exact pressure. But Josh, your forearms look like they're doing this thing. I know. Because if you keep your shoulders loose, if my shoulders were not loose, that would happen, right? If you have a loose shoulder, it's because this motion is literally throwing your elbow out. So it's not your shoulder manipulating it this way. It's the natural motion that happens when you lift your forearm like that, because it's basically throwing your arm. Cool. So you're not doing that. It's literally just your forearms, but because you're doing that, that's what happens. Cool. So when I practice, I literally like make sure that it's only my forearms doing the motion, and it's not like, I don't know how to even do that. Like, it's not that, okay? Okay, so. Cool. And the thing is, when you use the forearm, you don't want to keep the wrist stiff. You want to make sure it's still loose. So it gives it that natural follow through, or else you're going to get like, or is it it's really weird that happens when you like tighten the wrist. Okay, so make sure the wrist is loose, or else you're going to get this. You're not going to get follow through. Cool. Okay, and then you asked, have you ever practiced doing single strokes using just four? Yes. Especially, so I will practice those super, super, super slow, and not just tempo, but motion, like even slower than that, like hit, cool. And I would do the same thing with my wrist, just so you can really feel every part of the stroke, cool. Do you have any thoughts on the Delacruz etudes in general? I'm doing the ninth, saw people doing 30-second groupings as doubles, play it hand to hand. My side is whatever feels good on the day. I like doing it with doubles, singles. I think one time I did it with a paradiddle. So whatever sounds good and whatever sounds like the phrase you want, it's really about phrasing. If you want it to be like digga digga dot, then I might do singles. If I wanted to do like digga digga dot, I might do doubles. But you can also do both with the opposite. You can do digga digga dot with doubles or digga digga dot with singles. It just depends on the colors you want. Depending on, it really depends on the day. If I feel like, what do I feel like today? Let's see. I feel like today I'm feeling doubles. So my reasoning, I would do singles personally because of the second phrase. The first one's hard because I'm going to go digga digga dot. The second one, I want to go digga digga dot, which is easier for me to do with singles. That kind of thing. I'm playing it too fast too, but I mean, yeah, I could do that. And then also struggling with longer rolls. When I'm playing, it feels just right, but when I listen back, it's held them out longer. Okay, so this is where you start doing what I call roll comparisons. This will be in the second book in like a year and a half, hopefully. But also, if you go to Stick Control has this. I think theirs is between doubles and then like a rudimental roll and then a buzz roll or a multiple bounce roll. So Stick Control has it towards the back of the book. Developing Dexterity has these exercises too, I believe. So I would practice like singles first and do them opposites. So right hand first. For me, this is my right hand. So left hand. And then doing a double stroke roll of that. Then doing it again. Multiple bounce. Cool. So focusing first on like short rolls. So like. And really making sure they're 16ths. If you're trying to do sixes, then you could do like. Using a metronome, obviously. And I would also practice between using wrist only. It's really difficult, usually. I practice them because it's a lot of work to just use your wrists. But you'll be, as long as you practice it with common sense, it'll be good. Cool. And then practicing with just forearm. Cool. Then you started getting. Then there's a part of the book. It's very difficult, and I had to remember to put caution because essentially what you're going to do is just roll for like 16 bars and then repeat it. So you're just doing this, that kind of thing for like 16 bars and then repeating it like 4 times. It's really hard, but it's an endurance thing. So I would probably try putting a metronome on like one beat of 4/4 bar. So you do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. another thing is when you're playing long rolls, like let's say you have something very rhythmic, like man, whoa, what's it? I'm trying to remember where that long roll is. Oh, something like that, and then it goes. Like that kind of thing. The thing is to really keep in mind the beat in your head and not follow the beat based on your arm pattern. Okay? So you should be able to do like fives or something. And be able to land on the beat anywhere. So I would probably practice like putting like a 4/4 measure on 60 and playing like fives or just rolling until you get to the 1. And not having the inner beat, so just having the beat on the 1 and then stopping. So you do like 1, 1. Cool. Also being able to land on the opposite hand. So 1. Cool. And within that, you might have to slow down or speed up the roll to get somewhere. And you can use that to your advantage too, either increasing it to add some intensity to the end, or slowing it down to like decrease intensity and just have it more like that kind of thing instead of that kind of thing. Cool. Hope that helped. Hello. Any other questions? So the other thing that's good for is making sure you can easily transition between singles to whatever roll you need. So you don't want to you want to be able to automatically go to your roll stiff, your roll position without like doing weird stuff. So if your natural playing position is here, like if it's this, like I would suggest trying to access your roll as close to this as possible. Now, I don't play this way, but even I can still. Transitions are pressure, not position. Okay? So you don't want to have like some weird cool. Another feel like it's loud enough. Oh, okay. So, this is actually a great segue because the way I think of snare drum rolls is how I think of like both timpani rolls and like any mallet rolls. You're just trying to engage the membrane and keep it ringing, okay? So again, you don't want to give it too much information or else it kind of wonks out, especially if you're playing too loud. If you're playing too loud, you get like, then you get that kind of thing. You want to just, especially when you're doing a long roll, you just give it a nice attack, and then you just give it some like cushion to this roll. You have like a ta. It's not like ta. Okay. So the dynamic is really dependent on how well you can manage the information you're giving the drum. If you can't manage the amount of information you want to give it, then it's going to not respond well. So let's say naturally I can get like, if I want to get louder, then I need to add more weight and increase the speed a little bit. So when I add weight, that gives more information to the drum, and when I increase the speed, that also gives more information. So I need to make sure that neither are overpowering it, which means I have to cushion the weight a little bit with a slower stroke, but at the same time, I'm moving faster, so that means it's a lot more work because I'm trying to move slowly fast. You know what I mean? It just feels like I'm doing, instead of doing like this thing, I'm trying to do that and trying to mitigate the weight as much as I can so that way the drum doesn't get overpowered. So. It also depends on the kind of head you have. If you have, like, the thinner the head is, the less information it can take, in my opinion. It's just me. So that's why I never use, like, I stopped using diplomats and like M5s because they're so thin. Like, one, the thinness doesn't give it a lot of depth in the head itself, which means the depth is really relegated to the stick and the drum, so you don't have any help with the head. And then, like, if you add more weight to it, the head starts kind of giving out a little bit, and so it sounds a lot more like paper the louder you get. And it just doesn't, it kind of sounds thin, in my opinion. So I usually use, like, the Evans 360. I think that's I forget what kind of ply that is, or mill. I don't know anything about technical things about heads. But I use an Evans 360 because it's thicker for me to, you know, I just like them. I used to use, I forget what it was, I used to use an Ambassador. I think it might be as thick or thicker than the, I don't know. But I go for a thicker head. Cool. Diplomats and thinner, I usually don't. So that also affects how much information you can put on the drum, the kind of head you have. Also the size of the drum. This drum can take a lot of information because of the size. The thickness of the drum. The thicker the drum is, the more information it can take, which is why I love mine back at the hall. Okay, cool. Yeah. So, when you're talking about like timpani rolls, it's really, I wish I had some mallets. Oh, here we go. I'm going to borrow these, whomever they are, I'm sorry. Luckily there's a timpani thing. So when you're doing timpani rolls, the same thing applies. Like, you're accessing and you're engaging the head, and you're just what do you call it? You're initiating the vibrations of the head first. Cool. Do this real quick. Cool. So you're just, first you initiate. Cool. And then you're just trying to maintain that ring after that. Not once you initiate the head, it's really about making sure you're not initiating it a bunch of times after that. So that means, for me, it means a lot of upstrokes, because you're not trying to keep initiating it with the same weight. If you do that, then you get this, you get that. So you want to have one with a nice weight, and then everything else is just up, maintaining that ring. And again, it's just making sure there's not a lot of weight in that stroke. The more weight there is, the more lift you need. and that'll give you more sound. So if you want more weight, you need more lift after that. And then if you want to maintain that ring, that means the upstrokes have to be more, and the weight of these upstrokes have to be more to keep that ring going. Other things that affect that, the tightness of the drum, the looser the drum is, the slower you should roll. Like if it's an E or something. Like you don't want to roll like, you want to roll slow. I have no idea what that sounds like out there, sorry. The tighter the drum is, the faster you need to roll, generally. Press again, press again. Cool. So rolling, specifically in the Cleveland style that I was taught, a lot of up. So it's essentially in the slow version, you have the initial stroke. And there's just a lot of that after that. And it's, again, you're using an upstroke just because you're trying to keep the thing going. You have an initial stroke, and you're just trying to keep the spring going like that, instead of like doing that. Cool. And again, the louder you want it, the more weight you need, more up, and maybe a little faster or slower, just depends. Depends on the drum, depends on the note. But again, the more weight you add, the more you have to mitigate it with either more upstroke, a slower stroke generally. So yeah, it really depends. Also, the stick affects it. The core of the stick affects it. The wrapping of the stick affects it. Whether you're playing German or French or American can affect it too. If you're doing German, I have no idea. I am not a German timpanist, but I imagine if it's anything like snare drum, it's really just about getting away or letting the stick just do what it needs to do to respond. The dangers you can get into is, especially when the stick comes back, is that this part of your hand is gonna press down. You need to make sure it's loose, like, cool. Or else you're gonna get like a lot of unnecessary articulation and impact from like from that part. At least for my hands, that's what happens when I play German. Cool. Yeah. Anything else? Let's see if anybody asked. Oh, somebody, sorry. Okay, here we go. That's the timpani one. When I play French grip, my weak hand, I don't get vibrations in the first digit where the fulcrum would be. It's like in the bone rouge. Is that a comp? So if you're still here, is your natural position for German this, or is it more like that? Because if it's like this, when you go into French, you don't necessarily, yeah, it really depends on what's comfortable. If you're in French, you don't necessarily need the first digit. Hey, Am. Yeah, if you're in French, you don't necessarily need that first digit. It really is just the second digit and or the bone of the second digit or between. At least for me, that's what happens when I play French, which I don't. But whenever I try to, that's what happens. Yeah. So I wouldn't say it's bad or wrong, personally. There's a lot of things I will never say is bad or wrong. If it's comfortable, it's good. If it sounds good, it's good. As long as it's comfortable and not hurting you, I'm down. Cool. But back to snare drum, I guess. Does anyone else have any questions? Let me put these back before I forget. Then what you do, I know, my hair's growing back. It's very straight. Yeah, yeah, really, I mean, a lot of the grips don't necessarily, I'm even trying to think. Yeah, I mean, it's there as a safety, but it's really not doing much, at least for me. Yeah, I feel like in all of my grips, German, French, or American, the first digit is really just there along for the ride. So that's just me, though. So again, it depends on people's hands. If their index finger digit is really incorporated, then that's fine. If it's not, it's fine. You know, I feel like it becomes, let's see. If it becomes a little more engaged when I'm playing super, super soft and super, super articulate, because again, I go all the way to the front of the fulcrum, which means the sig actually drops a little bit into that position, and that's what naturally happens. I'm not like, because again, it's based on like my natural wanting to throw. So if I want to throw this way, it naturally goes into that position. But again, that's just the way I throw my stick. If you look at Jojo Mayer's first Secret Weapons of the Modern Drummer, Part 1, the way he throws it's basically the same thing. It's like throwing a tennis ball like that, and the fingers naturally open and close in that position. So it would naturally go there. Cool. It's also in my book. Let's see. Soft rolls. Okay. That's a whole nother story. Okay, so I would do the same thing. With soft rolls, everything's coming from your tap position or your playing position, where everything starts. So I would literally, again, start just by dropping the stick. And if you're still throwing from the same place as your loud rolls, which either will be at the middle finger or wherever you do it for the this position, you'll find if you use the same position and throw area that you use for the loud rolls, you'll find that the soft one, when you go this low, is a lot it's a lot more open than you would want it. So then you again push, or you move the throw pattern to as far forward as possible. So instead of that curve, you're thinking about like this curve. And that'll increase the density / speed of the bounce. And it's literally, If you're just doing this, it's literally thinking about not throwing from this part of your thumb, but throwing from that part of your thumb, and that'll increase the density. If you're doing this, then it's the same thing. You're thinking about not throwing from there, but throwing from up here. Cool? And honestly, when I get like super, super, super soft, I just have these going on because it's just like it's really cool. And generally, I relegate less fingers on the stick for when I'm this soft. So these are just kind of hanging off like that. Again, they're not like this, but they're just off of the stick in the same position that they would be, so that they can easily come back if they're needed. But this is just where my fingers naturally want to go if I put the stick on. So they naturally don't want to be on the stick anyway, if I'm just like doing that. So it's not like it's not like I'm forcing them to get off. It's just I'm like relaxing them. Cool. And then after that, it's just getting used to letting the stick lifting and throwing from the same spot. And making sure that you're throwing with the same speed. And that takes a lot of slow practice and time. And then the longer you want it, the longer you want the buzzes to last, the more follow through during the stroke you need. Okay, so you don't just like stop. That'll be a natural. That'll just let the stick do what it wants by itself. You want to elongate it, that you need to add that extra follow through. Okay, so you just want, or do you want? Cool. So it adds a little bit of length. Cool. The other thing that adds length is the weight you give the stick. Cool. And that either comes from the wrist itself or the forearm. Again, you can do it just with the wrist or with the energy of the forearm. And that gives you a really nice, it feels really good to me. It gives you a really nice cushiony sound. If you want it to be more intense, you increase the pressure you're giving the top of the fulcrum. You get this like more buzzy sound. And then that would increase the buzzes and density, and then you have to move faster. But you don't necessarily have to use pressure though. You can just use, again, a springboard. So if you're using this fulcrum, the springboard comes from the tip, so you can use that as an extra in. So it doesn't necessarily have to come from side pressure. It can come from the spring again. If you're using your middle finger, that can give you that. It's a very light, like it's not going to be intense because of the softness. It's going to be very, very light. Okay. In your opinion, ooh, I don't know them all. Yeah, sorry. I don't know it. I don't know the Carter 8 timpani pieces very well, or I only know the one that everybody plays. Da dun 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 dun. Bing bing bum bum. I only know that one. Hence percussionist. I would totally practice soft rolls with the snares off, so you can get the, again, working on the accessing the ring of the drum. Cool. And I mean, you don't necessarily have to relegate it to just a buzz. Like you could do threes. If you can control threes here. Or just a chunkier roll. It's different, you know? Like maybe you want that color. If you want something like, that's a certain color that'll sound, it won't sound like out there, okay? So, but then if you want something like that, just a buzzier sound, that's going to get a different color as well. Especially for, like, I don't know. You have different options. And then speaking of colors, roll colors, the more weight, and again, if you put more information on the drum, it's going to have more volume and have more sound. If you get rid of the information, it would be lighter and not as loud. So if you want something like that's a lot of mitigation of the weight and a lot of up. So for me, I try to use that roll for Delacluze etudes, except for some really loud ones. Like if I'm trying to give it, like especially the ninth one, if I'm trying to give a very light, then I use that lighter roll. Cool. If I want it more intense, then I add more weight. Cool. And that's the same height difference. That's just different weight. Cool. And I use that roll for that and for what you call it? Capricho Español. It's not like, you know, it's lighter, so, you know, that kind of thing. I hate diplomat heads, specifically on top. I like them on the bottom, but I can't stand these. And you wouldn't use that roll for Shostakovich. You wouldn't be. You know, it has to be more. You know. Then obviously you have to practice the transition between like a long roll going from loud to soft. Again, if you get the book now, then when the next book comes, you won't have to work as hard. But essentially, if your motion is naturally that, you want to keep it as simple and as close to that motion as possible. So if you're here, when you transition into arms, you have to keep the same pressure and all that stuff, right? Hello. So then when you play an actual roll, you want to keep it the same motion. Louder it gets, the bigger the motion gets. Then the softer it gets, the more compact it gets. You don't want to add muscular tension or else that compromises a lot of things. So just relegate it to motion. Cool? That it? Is that everything? Did I get all the questions? That was like, how long is this now? I can't see. Cool. So there's your rolling video. Cool. I'll try to do one more of these before Christmas. So I'll put this on YouTube like usual, and thanks for watching. Please comment if you have any other questions for next time. Cool. Bye.